Hi everybody, I have another guest today, Kelvin from NILG.AI from Portugal. Thanks Kelvin for joining me here today in Essen.
Thanks Dennis for the invitation.
Last time we've seen in Brühl as part of our technology days where customers from around the globe shared their stories about engineering projects and also AI projects as we discovered in the morning. And since you're around, and we will learn later why, you are in Essen, and I took the chance to ask you a couple of questions about AI. You are a specialist for that, and I'm just starting to play around with that. I did some private research with ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, and some other things. And so I don't really understand it all yet, so maybe you can help me shine a little light in that. So the first thing I would like to address, I saw a picture, a political compass for GPTs. Yeah? So this kind of political leaning, and they were asking those different ChatGPT and so on questions, and then they would sort them in. And I wasn't even sure if that's a valid thing to do with an AI. What's your understanding? Does that work? And how do we work with that in an industry environment?
Yeah, so most of these LLMs, generative AI tools nowadays, are for general purpose applications, right? It's not, they were not trained for any specific niche, but for the general domain, right? And as such, they were trained on public available data. I mean, on data from the internet mainly. So it's normal that any bias that comes from the general corpus of data that is publicly available gets reflected then into these models, right? So I have seen some research pointing out that most of these LLMs or these AIs are leaning left on the left liberal side of the matrix, right, of the political compass. And of course, this could come from this could be a consequence of multiple reasons. One of them is that the general public data maybe is more leaning towards this side of the political compass. So the source of the data, it could be, for example, that the way we are optimizing the models is promoting this type of data or this type of behavior. But there is also another important factor here, which is not only the input data, but the type of feedback that we give to the models. So the bias could be both on the data and the way we train the model, or on the persons that provide the feedback. Okay, so these persons typically get hired by a company. Let's say there is a bias on the selection process of the candidates for training these models, and then this bias will get reflected on what they tell the model it's good or bad. Okay, so they like an option that basically resonates on their way of thinking, right? That seems to make sense, and that will, in the end, of course, bias the final model towards a certain type of behavior. And for example, here you are asking about political compass, because it's something that as a society we measure and track and we get worried about, right? But there are many implicit biases that these models could have. Some biases are good, right? For example, you know that you shouldn't approach to a tiger because that will kill you, right? That's a good form of bias. Right. So I wouldn't say it's good or bad, it's more or less if it is aligned with your expectations.
And now that you're explaining that, I think I also learned about this data somewhere in those GPTs, and also this layer where I talk to when I chat with it, like a different layer of filtering. Is that true?
Yeah, then of course, as safety measurements, one thing, so these GPTs are trained to answer with what will be a feasible response in terms of a sentence that is well constructed to answer this question. But then, of course, most of these technologies are coupled with a safety layer on top, where people try to identify, you shouldn't be being racist, or trying to recognize attacks to these models and trying to prevent the AI from answering or from getting triggered into this type of behaviors. So that's another potential point of bias. For example, what you think is a good mitigation plan for this type of responses, or what you think is a good potential attack or not, and where you put the threshold, of course, will then influence the model for sure.
I read for some time you could ask ChatGPT, for example, pretend you are a bad guy, and what would you say in that case? I don't think that works anymore.
Yeah, at some point it did, and actually we used that on a project, one of the hands-on data projects. We didn't have data, and we needed to get customer support emails complaining about stuff. And at that point was GPT-3, I think, 3.5, something like that. And then it didn't answer like with complaints about the service or whatever, because I cannot be aggressive, I cannot be whatever. So we had to tell the model like, assume you are an actor playing a role of a end customer that is mad with the company and complaining about A, B, and C, and then it started giving the actual answer. Those kind of tricks are less likely to trigger the model nowadays than it was before. But that's of course like obvious stuff they can control and that we can observe. But then there is another layer, especially when we are working in a corporate level, which is biases around these models that make them not align with your company culture, with your values, with your way of doing things, with your tone. For example, let's say these models are very politically correct, right? So they like to say sorry, they like to, act in a way that is very, let's say, neutral, okay? But for example, at NILG.AI, one of our core top values is accountability, okay? So we like to be accountable for the things we do well and bad for the two, right? Let's say we put an AI handling our customer support, okay, for NILG.AI. And then the customer complains about something. You didn't deliver this on time. The AI will try to be politically correct around this and being neutral, but that's not the way we act, right? So the way we act is we are accountable for what we do. So that is a bias in a certain sense of the AI that is not aligned with our organizational values, let's say. And those are more difficult to measure, right? Those kind of alignments are more difficult to measure because we are talking about several implicit things. So how would you define your company culture? It's kind of tricky, right? And so that's another form of bias we have seen and we have explored.
So that's the first step, to take that from some private playing, with some GPT online at home to some industrial application more. What else would be to consider AI as reliable in an industry world where customers demand clear answers, reliable answers, and I'm always feeling for my people that I talk to, that you give them a warning, something might be broken, but they are responsible to make the decision whether to shut down, keep going. That is somebody based on blurry data needs to make a very hard decision. How do you support that with such modeling?
Yeah, so in general, and this is, I believe most AI projects fail because of lack of engagement and acceptability of this model by the end population, right? And the main issue is that we are trying to force these models into the way we work without redefining the social contract or without redefining the agreement and understanding we have around the actions that will be taken based on these models' outputs, right? So let's say my customer support team makes a decision to reply in a certain way. For example, yes, I will do a discount, or yes, I will renew your subscription or whatever, because the AI suggested so. So who is accountable for that? Who is responsible for that? And we believe we need, more than the technical stuff, we need to redefine how we are reacting, how we are updating our way of work given these new tools. Of course, there are ways of avoiding this. For example, you don't just generate an answer, but an answer plus a reference. Like, you should answer like in this way because in the contract says this kind of thing, or you should do A because here's the reference that I found on the internet, and then you move the responsibility, or you move the who is accountable, right?
Is it also a danger that people like me confuse what they use on the internet, some free version with industry software? Let's say there's those regular GPTs. Sometimes they would refuse to give an answer, error, fault, and then you check and it was just running out of time. And so right now I use the prompt already. Take your time. I'm not in a hurry. It's a little crazy for me to talk like this to a machine, right?
Yeah, in the end, we need to understand that they are answering in the way that a human will answer, because they are trained on text generated by humans, at least for now. In 20 years, maybe they will be trained on their own text, because most of the text online will be from generative AI. But that's something that users are not, do not know that they will have to. So let's say generative AI will become like an interface with information, right? With computers. And we are used to click and get a direct answer from that click, and a predictable answer from that click, right? Yeah. When you click on a UI, you know what you will get. But if you are interacting in a way that is much more subjective and complex, such as human language, we don't know what we will expect from that prompt, from that query from that inquiry that we produce to AI. So knowing how to properly say things, especially because of the way these models are trained, I believe will be like a challenge. Like we will need to master this language of AI at some point.
I think that's where it gets complicated. I checked very simple things, like how many power plants are there in Germany, in China, how much cement does Vietnam produce? And I was amazed about the quality of the results. I've done those things over the years, a quick check. I know roughly the number, but energy is changing too fast currently, so I wanted most up-to-date numbers. And you just want it in one unit, I don't know, megawatts, gigawatts, some unit. And often I would research, you'll end up with the government of that country and you get the answer, but in a totally different unit. So you cannot really use it for your nice little table that you're working on. So yeah, I did a couple of things. I did it by hand. I think next time I should maybe use some Excel plug-in or something, because it's just stupid to do prompt by prompt, just exchanging the countries. But so I think I also caught the AI lying there in some cases. So I was looking into China, Vietnam, as I said, and then there was Vietnam or Thailand, something like that, was, yeah, in this country they have more than 90 million tons of cement production per year, which is more than half of the global production per year. But since I was working on that, I knew that the global production was like 4,000 million tons per year, and 90 is not more than 4,000. But this answer was true for China, and I got it later in a China context, which got 2,600, which is more than half of 4,000. So, and I even asked the AI that I used, they're like, what happened here? Why are you lying to me? Oh, sorry, the answer is different. So with this engineering background where I'm coming from, I'm just looking for some reliable answer. It's also fine if it says, I don't know, but you always get an answer or an error. Yeah? And so do you have any ideas for me? Should I wait a little bit more, or should I maybe work on my prompts to get a better result? How can I deal with that?
Okay, so there are multiple sources for that. One could be that the data they were training on is outdated, right? Or nowadays you can connect them to the internet and get more up-to-date information. But these models are not trained to be accurate, factual in the way they produce their answers, so they are not facts. Those are just answers that look coherent, okay? That sound like a potential answer from a human. So the way we try to prioritize the usage of these models in companies is AI is good at reducing uncertainty, right? If you are working in a high uncertainty environment, then AI will narrow down this uncertainty by bringing these kind of predictions, right? But it won't lead you to zero uncertainty. It won't lead you to a super safe environment. So do not prioritize decision making with AI on environments where you cannot tolerate a certain level of uncertainty. So let's say you will invest $1 billion on plans based on an AI answer. I wouldn't do that. But you can reduce uncertainty, you can accelerate certain decisions, right?
Right now I often see this disclaimer, yeah, don't trust my answers, but yeah, then thank you for nothing.
Yeah. And people, when you're talking directly with AI, they give you this disclaimer. But then most of our customers, let's say we are automating a customer support, they don't want to expose to the end customer that the end customer is talking with an AI instead of a human operator, right? But then it's like a knife with two sides, right? Because they don't want to show the end user that they are talking with an AI, but then who is going to be accountable for the errors of that AI, right? I would prefer to tell my end customer, like, hey, you're interacting with an AI, so I can give you the fastest answer I can, but don't trust me on these answers because they could be wrong.
I think there was an auto purchase in the USA done by this. The customer kind of convinced the AI to just say whatever I say right now. And say, yeah, for $1 or whatever you can buy the car. I don't know if that's a legal contract. If you plead for error, yeah, exactly. What error, and is it legal, and so on.
Exactly. So avoid hiding the AI. Tell the end user he's using AI and adjust the social contract. Like who is going to be accountable for this? And then this technology sounds brilliant and shiny, but it's not bulletproof yet and it's very immature. Okay, so a suggestion I often give to our customers is do not start, at least for now, with the initiatives where the AI will be end customer facing. Start with the ones that will be used internally, where you can put a human in the loop. Okay, and then yes, maybe you won't go from A to Z, you will go from A to D and then have a minor optimization here, and then a human will do the rest of the work. It's not as sexy, let's say, as it will sound, or as it could be. But remember that these things haven't been here for 20 years, and we don't know what they can do exactly and what they cannot, right?
And yeah, also I'm afraid if I generate something, is it mine? Is it the AI's property, the intellectual property? Do I maybe infringe on somebody else's text or whatever? Do you have any hints for me how to work with that? Not talking about pictures maybe in the first place, but texts and then second step pictures?
Yeah, I guess. So for any case, text, picture, video, audio, any type of data, right?
Everything now.
All of these could be subject to things like copyright, right? So we need to understand, first, we need to read the contracts with these companies. Okay, for example, OpenAI protects you in case of any copyright infringement, or that's what they said. I'm not sure how is that at this point. But this will, generative AI will cause a review of our whole IP legal system, okay? For example, who has the copyright of any output from a generative AI? Is the initial user that generated the data, or the initial set of users that generated the data that trained this AI? Are the guys that programmed the AI, or the company that generated the AI? Is the AI itself? And this has a legal void in the sense that for now most countries do not allow non-human entities other than companies to own copyright. Or is it the person that used AI? Or is it no one, which is another option, which is these things cannot be copyrighted because it's not a human invention or whatever. So it's not clear yet who has the, let's say, copyright data, the IP data on the outputs of the AI.
I think on LinkedIn, the only one that was super clear, at least what I saw, was Adobe. That says if you use our stuff, you are it's either licensed or old. And if you get in trouble as a user, then we will pay for the problems or whatever comes up. I'm not sure if others
OpenAI also
do the same.
That clause.
That's good to know. Yeah, because I'm always afraid to use any pictures, or you never know where it's coming from, and maybe
at least for the image version, I know they claim that they will protect you and pay for all costs. But then, what happens with the input data that you put there? So let's say you generate some input data that was copyrighted by that is a trade secret from your company, right? So you are potentially infringing your trade secrets, your privacy policies. So that's another thing that has to be reviewed. What I'm trying to say here is always involve like your data protection officer, your legal team when you are using these models, because you will need to redefine potentially most of your contracts with customers, with internal IP protection, etc. So it makes sense to involve them.
I think my company is there on a good track. My trials were of private nature with private interests, so that was something else. But we have clear communication there that we have some internal solution that we are supposed to use and nothing else. And so I'm thinking that is a good way to keep it clean. And also you never know if every employee would plug in something. Yeah, if somebody knows what all the employees are thinking about all day, you know pretty much what's going on inside the company. So there should be guidelines how to use that.
And we need, even today more than ever, we need to understand what are our data governance principles. For example, I write a prompt, with internal information about the customer or about the company, for example. The answers that this AI will generate will potentially leak some of this information on the output. Even if you're using a private version of these GPTs, right? The answer it generates will be separated from the input that generated, so it's not under the same umbrella of the data protection rules that you most likely have, but potentially will leak data to other end users. Let me give you a clear example. With this customer support example that I believe everybody is used to see nowadays with generative AI, right? Let's say you pass to the AI your standard operating procedures on how to react to this type of request. You need to ask yourself the question, does the end user that is receiving the output from this AI capable of having access to this internal SOP, or does it have certain private information that shouldn't be leaked by any way into the end user? And how we reorganize our data so it's using in a way that the end user that receives this text or this data can see whatever. So it is risk-free in a sense that they can see whatever we put in the prompt, I think it's something that requires discussion across teams.
Yeah, that's necessary, and really, as a company, have a strategy there, not to lose any data or breach any private information agreements that you have. Yeah. Do you have any hints for me how to use the prompts? And sometimes I see very detailed ways on LinkedIn what you should do with ChatGPT. Is that worthwhile the effort, or what is if I just ask simple questions, often I don't get the answer that I want. So maybe you have an idea for me.
So if you're asking a question to an AI just to get an answer, one-shot thing, right? You don't need to care much about making it reliable and accurate, etc., because you will get the answer, you will process it one at a time. So I don't advise to complexify things, so just ask the question. But we don't work that much with the end user, but with systems that should be reliable and reproducible in the answers they give and should be consistent in the answers we give. So there are like 6 basic parts that we put into any prompt. One is the role, things like you are acting as an AI advisor, or you are acting as an engineering expert on this field. So one is the role. Then is the task, okay, and be as descriptive as possible with the task that it should solve. The output format, what type of output format you want. What I call the don't do, which is what you should avoid. And here you have things like never say you are an AI model, don't act in this certain way, don't use this kind of information. So things you should avoid. Then we have the external context, and this is where you need to be careful with the private information that you have. Mm-hmm. For example, what is the external content in terms of internet data that could be relevant, standard operating procedures, customer data, etc. And then it's the specific task that you are asking to answer. So it's not the general description, but in this case, I'm asking you this question about A, B, and C. Okay, so if you cover all of these parts, in general, you will have a consistent answer, but only get into this trouble if you are going to use this prompt like dozens or thousands of times. Right?
I assume you have certain standards that you can just copy, paste, and adapt, or That makes sense. If I just see all those brackets, what to fill in, it's complicated. But sure, if it's multiple users, okay, I get it.
Yeah. Or if it is a system that is already deployed there, reusing this and answering this question multiple times.
That's a good idea. Yeah. I was curious for me and for the audience, what brings you to Essen this time? I think the hands-on data is bringing more challenges in your direction.
Yeah, we won our 4th hands-on data challenge this time with Tufnord, and it's called Service Finder. We are basically mapping all services provided by Tufnord, so we can guide the end users in a more seamless way through all the set of thousands of services they provide. And of course, it will involve generative AI to structure the questions the users have, to structure the information around all of these services, and to guarantee that we have the right matches.
How long will that take roughly?
The pilot is about 3 months. So the proof of concept as part of this hands-on data challenge is about 3 months. And of course, that's our time for validation. Then it will be a different timeline for the end deployment and to put this into life.
It's something that will be visible on their website, or is it more an internal thing?
For now, we are testing, and we are measuring risks, and we are assessing what this can do, what this cannot do. We are trying to understand what are the limitations of this approach. And then we will have to decide what is the right way.
I will keep checking on their site, so maybe there's at some point something where I've heard of when it started out. More as an outlook, to come to an end of this little interview here. Thank you, Kelwin, already. But what are your private and company highlights that you expect for the next 2 years, 3 years, whatever? Like, what are you looking forward to, private and business-wise?
Okay, so internally we are trying to build like the standard of AI adoption. Okay, so the way our vision is basically that whenever a company tries to implement AI, they have at NILG.AI a guideline on how to do it properly, mitigating all risks, etc. So something that we do like every day is understanding the decisions we made, and we try to standardize them. Okay, and so an outcome of that is actually our YouTube channel. If I may, please subscribe to the channel. It has already like 50,000 subscribers, and hopefully by end of year.
After this video, 100,000.
100,000. Yeah, I was saying end of year, but maybe next week, depending on this video. And we publish there a lot of insights around how to embrace AI in a safe and productive manner. In terms of the industry, how the industry will evolve, of course we are on a hype on AI, and then people is super excited about it, then the hype will get down, I guess, a bit. But something that I love about this new trend on generative AI is that it's lowering the entry barrier for using AI. So before generative AI, before these foundation models, you needed tons of data to train your own AI models and to benefit from AI. Now it's much more easier to benefit from AI with less data. So if you're a small company, it's more accessible, it's more democratized the way that we can access AI. So I believe we will see many more micro entrepreneurs, solopreneurs benefiting from this new trend of AI, and that will cause, I hope, a boost on entrepreneurship around the world of people that can solve problems in a very easy manner using AI.
I cross my fingers for you. I mean, more people using AI is also more competition, but maybe those players that already have their procedures established, good relations with big customers, maybe they are in a good position also to succeed in the future and maybe have more colleagues, more partners on board. So good luck. And next time you're in Essen, let me know. Thanks, Kelvin.
For sure.
Bye, everybody. See you.
Bye.